I'm Paul Smith.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Collins.
Good evening. This one's going to get busy tonight. Coming up later.
In areas which are managed for hunting, there are far more animals than there are in areas which are not managed for hunting. That is a verifiable fact.
This is the Trump administration reversing a ban on importing trophies from elephants and the like killed in Africa. Can anyone defend big game hunting? We'll look at that a little later. Plus this.
It's disheartening. I mean, you can't believe what you're told. You're actively encouraged to go and buy a diesel vehicle and think about the environment, and now we're the enemy.
Yeah, there's one UK city where they're asking drivers of diesel cars to pay 50 quid to park for just 4 hours. We'll look at that one too, but we begin here.
The housing crisis won't be solved by accountancy tricks, shuffling housing association debt on or off the government balance sheet. The Chancellor must bring forward genuine new funding to deal with this in next week's budget.
Onto that in just a second. Also looking at what is being described as a purge on free speech, as one social media company essentially reduces the status of right-wing commentators. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of that in just a bit as well. You can, of course, watch the proceedings. How exciting is that? We're actually kind of on the telly, as it were. Well, sort of. If you go to, what's the kind of 21st century telly, all right? Facebook.com/LBC. Moving pictures of the programme as we speak. Facebook.com/LBC. Now, why should we be suspicious of John McDonnell? I promise you, I know I've not always been kind, really, to the Labour front bench. It's a sort of ragtag of Marxist dodgepots, somehow parading as electable politicians, but they might be onto something here. So I stand to be corrected. I would kind of like, at the end of this hour, to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to vote Labour at the next election. That would be nice, wouldn't it, for Labour? Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell has demanded an emergency budget for public services, which he says are in crisis. He's promising to spend £17 billion a year extra, a year, on the NHS, social care, schools and local government. The extra spending would be paid for by tax rises for companies and the rich. Read of that what you will. The government said the Labour's plans would lead to more debt, higher taxes and fewer jobs. Of course, this comes just as Philip Hammond prepares to give his budget next Wednesday afternoon. You'll hear everything related to that here on LBC. Based on this story, there could be no one on the planet who doesn't, at least in part, agree with John McDonnell. What is not to like? There's the shopping list. £17 billion. Do you want to spend £17 billion extra every single year? NHS, social care and schools, and also local government. This is huge. Make no mistake, this is not an insignificant, even in the grander scale of the telephone number-like figures that governments spend on departments. 17 billion extra in these areas is massive. And it's going to do that by taxing big old corporations, kind of people that have got loads of money anyway and probably don't pay what most of us would consider their fair share of taxes. It's going to hike the tax on those guys and also on the rich. Now, it's a little dicey there. It depends on who or what you see as rich. I know from experience, doing this programme, late nights here on LBC, that the lay philosophers and the armchair economists are listening in their droves. I usually find that people who call in to these kind of phone-ins are far better, often more informed and palatable than the so-called experts. I want to know why John McDonnell's figures don't add up. Where is the catch? And the reason I ask this is very simple. There is no one around the world doing it. There is nowhere at all. I regularly talk about this, and I will do so forever, because it has to be fascinating. I appreciate that it's a great British sport. to bash the Tories as being austerity obsessed, who love the rich and hate the poor, and they've given all the money to the rich people and taken all the money from the poor people. None of this is true, by the way, but that is sort of the national narrative that is out there right now. But it doesn't explain why countries like France, even under the socialists, where Monsieur Hollande was there, cutting public spending by 50 billion euros. 50 billion euros between 2015 and 2017. That's a socialist president. You remember when he came in and everyone said, oh, if he gets in, we're going to leg it to another country because he's going to hike the taxes up badly. And he did put some taxes up, but also set out a spending reduction plan, cutting public spending by 50 billion euros. If you move to Emmanuel Macron's current regime in France, you will see there is kind of a continuation of this. The French budget, presented at a cabinet meeting 6 weeks ago, plans to cut 10 billion euros next year, 15 billion worth of cuts. This is from a centrist politician, Monsieur Macron. So the fact that France, who are in not dissimilar position in terms of difficulties in balancing the books, bearing in mind that France now has, what you might call the epitome of a centrist politician in Emmanuel Macron. Now, he's not saying, here's a good idea, let's just spend 17 billion extra pounds. If you move over into Germany, you will find no such spending going on in the fiscal plans from Angela Merkel. Let's go south, down to Spain. If anybody needed an injection of public spending, it would be Spain. There is no such plan to spend 17 billion pounds. Italy, similar story. You could go on around all the countries around Europe and beyond, and you won't really find in the current climate anyone promising to spend 17 billion pounds extra every year. In fact, you will probably find that wherever you go, you will see governments attempting to curtail spending. I mean, to a greater or lesser extent, that is always the kind of job of governments, to control what is spent. But you certainly will not see anywhere in a first world Western country somebody dipping into the government coffers to the tune of 17 billion pounds. So when John McDonnell says this, I think most of us would think, hang on, you're going to tax some rich people in order to pay for the NHS extra in schools, local government, social care. What's not to like? There has to be a reason. There has to be a catch. There has to be a reason why no other country is doing it. There has to be a reason why no one is following that line. John Edwards on Facebook says he talks as though the money belonged to the government and they're simply holding it back somewhere. It's our money that he wants to blow. Tony says more billionaires in London than anywhere else. They can afford more tax. John McDonnell speaks for the many, not the few. Well, I'm not sure he does speak for the many, not the few. I think he probably speaks for the few. He didn't get elected into high office because he didn't speak for the many. But the billionaires that are in London probably don't have this place as their point of taxation anyway. I mean, just because you're a billionaire in London doesn't mean to say you are liable to pay everything you earn. Most of your companies could be elsewhere around the world. You might not owe a bean to our country. 0345 6060 973. Tell me why you believe Labour can achieve this, because there is a completely different way of looking at this. I mentioned why no other country on the planet is doing anything like this. Well, you could kind of argue that's because they all sing from the same, what some would see as a failed hymn sheet, that every Western democracy monkeys around with the same kind of Keynesian economics that to many people has shown why the current system has failed. Now, actually, when you look at what's going on in government, they are spending more money than they've ever spent in all of these areas. There is clearly issues. There's never going to be a time when there's a sort of belief that we're heading towards, or we're trying to always get to a point where all problems are solved. And then we can sort of do that with our hands and go, fantastic, everything's done and dusted. Everybody's having it off royally. Life is fantastic. That point never exists. What has happened is we just talk about it more than we ever did. 0345 6060 973. So whilst, yes, austerity is alive and well, it's because of austerity that we've narrowed the deficit from nearly 10% to about 2.6% or something. I mean, it's significantly reduced in a fairly impressive way. Cynically, it's not being done by growth, but it has been done by the Tories raising taxes already, and of course a programme of public sector pay freezes and the like. That's the new going rate for working in the public sector. That's all. 0345 6060 973. Tell me why you think John McDonnell can achieve this. Because it sounds so simple, doesn't it? We'll just go to all the big companies that we think are avoiding tax, and we'll address that, but we'll also just hike corporation tax levels. In France, by the way, they're reducing corporation tax levels. So we'll hike corporation tax levels in this country, and then we'll tax the rich more. Now, I've got a sneaky feeling that taxing the rich more in this country probably means much more than this kind of strange, magical, psychological figure of 50p in the pound. I think a McDonnell-Corbyn government would be looking at the very least at 60p for people over a certain amount of money. That's my gut feeling. Say whatever you were, 60p over a certain rate, would 60p in the pound you would give to the government for your own endeavours and hard work. That is sort of the dictionary definition of obscene, by the way. Nonetheless, that I think is probably the direction of travel for a McDonnell administration. But I can see why this would sell very well on the doorstep. Vote for us. We'll put 17... You know what they're very good at, the kind of socialist Marxists? They're very good at saying controversial things in a very calm way. Have you noticed that? It's very good at... Very matter... Ken Livingstone was brilliant at doing that. He's fantastic at saying often fairly outrageous things, but said in a calm fashion. You think, maybe he's onto something. Corbyn has a PhD in that, and these guys are saying, look, 17 billion quid, it's all costed, they say. All sounds very sensible and prudent. There's the balance sheet. Tax the bigger companies, bigger corporation tax the rich, or pay for the NHS. What is not to like? 0345 6060 973. So if you are one of the aforementioned lay philosophers or economists who I know regularly listen to programmes like this, and particularly late nights here on LBC, I want you to talk me through which bit John McDonnell has got wrong. Assuming it's not that you fundamentally disagree with a tax rise out of a principle. Many people will argue that, in fact, economically, tax rises don't actually make sense. It's not about looking after the rich. That's not the way the Treasury, under either the Tories or Labour, do business. They don't sit there and say, oh, well, I've got a mate who's worth a few bob. Can you help him out by not raising the tax? It doesn't work like that. They've got X amount of money they need, and there's only one way of doing it, and that's via some form of taxation, directly or indirectly. So they've all got to... But there is a philosophical, economic argument that, in fact, having higher tax rates doesn't solve the problem. So you may be in that department, you might be in the department that you actually think it's unethical to simply go to this one group of people, the people that already pay in more and take out less, and say, you fund it. You lot over there, you fund it. 0345 6060 973. I'd like to know unequivocally why this will work. Why this will work. Is it just because no one's done it before? Is that what we're talking about here? You have to be suspicious when you look at socialist France. I know it's now gone centrist, but socialist France, the Macron year, the Hollande years, where they were attempting to save tens of billions of pounds by cutting public spending under a socialist government. Macron pitches up. He's very much in the centre, continues to reign over a system that is trying to cut just this year. What was that figure I gave you a second ago? 10 billion next year. That includes 15 billion euros worth of cuts. OK, so it's not just the UK. Why aren't France just saying, do you know what, that fella McDonnell just over the channel, he's really got this one sussed. What were we thinking? Here's us attempting to reduce corporation tax. It's about to go down in France. It's still higher than here, but it's about to go down by about 8%. So this is significant stuff by 2022. Why are they not looking at saying we need to balance them? Let's just do what Corbyn's doing. There must be a reason why they're not. 0345 6060 973. We'll talk to Jay in Wembley in just a second. It's Late Nights with Ian Collins, LBC.
This is LBC.
9-roll packs of quilted velvet toilet tissue are now only £3 at the Co-op. So it's time to make some room in the garage and stock up. Whoa, 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 whoa! Watch the brickwork, fella. Another deal for you from the Co-op. Was £4.99, subject to availability. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 5th of December.
No one wants to be in the red, in debt, or facing mortgage arrears. The only red should be what's in your glass, toasting a fresh new start. Thanks to Property Rescue, you can. They could buy your home for cash and pay your legal fees. You could even exchange within 48 hours and have money in the bank if you opt for their cash advance. Get that just sold feeling with Property Rescue. Fast forward to cash in the bank at propertyrescue.co.uk.
Right now, while you heat up last night's pizza, a rock legend is leaving his dressing room. There's a stadium out there buzzing with anticipation. And a world champion ready for the starting bell. So, what are you waiting for? Buy and sell tickets to your favourite events on StubHub.co.uk. StubHub, your tickets out.
Aled Jones returns with the final chapter in a groundbreaking series of albums. One voice, Believe. Performing with himself as a boy and, for the first time, alongside his son. Aled Jones, One Voice, Believe. Out now at selected Sainsbury's stores.
Did you know you can get real-time updates to find out when your bus is due? There are loads of mobile apps available, powered by TfL data, or you can visit our website, all of which make it easier than ever to plan your journey. Running for the bus may soon be a thing of the past. Search TfL improvements. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves. You get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
Late Nights with Ian Collins on LBC.
This in from Kate on text. It says, your gut feeling is nothing to hang an argument on. The West is generally a bit stumped on where to go next ideologically. I'm not really hanging an argument. It's a kind of a musing, I suppose, to coin a phrase. I'm questioning as to why this fantastically simple idea that the Shadow Chancellor wants to put forward of just spending 17 billion quid a year just on some tax rises that won't even affect most people. Most of us will be immune from it. Just rich old duffers and companies. That's it. 17 billion quid. I mean, what's not to like? But I think Kate does kind of identify a point there in the kind of Western model, if you like, is perhaps it's a bit flaked out. I don't think it's finished because we can sort of talk ourselves into this. We've been here many times. We are still a tip-top first world country with a good economy where most people work, have a home, car, go out, holiday, the usual thing. You know, we're not poor. There are pockets and areas, and I think that the issue that we have in the 21st century is that we've just never focused on them and talked about them as much as we currently do, but they've sort of always been there in varying forms. Nobody's going to tell me that we have today the same kind of social issues that we would have had in the 1950s, for example, or even further on from that. With you in a sec, Steve. Jay is in Wembley. How are you doing, Jay?
Hi there, Ian. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. What are your thoughts?
I just feel that this country is so right-wing in the sense that neoliberalism has become so embedded within the fabric of society that when someone remotely says something social democratic, it's straight away turned into being conceived as being something from the loony left. Mm-hmm. Now, these proposals, if you look at it in comparison to other countries in Europe, for instance, Sweden or Norway or Finland, they don't even sound that radical at all. It's just because of the...
Well, I don't know. There is a bit of an urban myth about Scandinavia that it's some sort of socialist utopia when it's not. They have some of the most generous rules and laws for business on the planet.
Exactly. So the thing, what I'm trying to get at is that because of the way that the debate has shifted to the right, it's every time you hear something, it gets fobbed off straight away.
But I hear what you're saying, Joe. I understand where you're coming from. But if, let's say, Ed Miliband had won the election in 2015 as a Labour man, and Ed Miliband is not Tony Blair, but he's a Labour man, he's a proud socialist, he would not be proposing this. Why not?
I think with Ed Miliband was that I think he was a Labour man, but because he wasn't confident enough with his convictions, because he felt that he wouldn't be able to win if he truly aired them. Whereas with Corbyn,
but I don't think Ed Miliband would want to take that course of action. I don't think he would be sitting here today saying we're going to spend 17 billion quid a year, which is why I'm not refuting John McDonnell's plans, but there's a whole bunch of question marks that it's reasonable to investigate. One would be, why would an Ed Balls or a Gordon Brown as Chancellor not have advanced this argument? If it was such an easy, winnable point that would take you to electoral success and keep most people happy, why did those guys not contemplate this level of spending?
I think perhaps it could be because of because they were afraid to take a risk and a gamble. Especially, I just think they were afraid to take a risk and a gamble. And
so it's a risk and a gamble, you think?
A risk and a gamble. But I just wanted to ask you. You said that they want to spend this money. Why don't you look at it a different way? Why don't you look at it like they want to invest this money? Because once you invest into these vital public services, then you will reap the rewards in the future. But
do you not think all the other parties know that as well, if it was that simple?
To be honest,
Do you think the Conservatives, when they sit around the table, or the Lib Dems, haven't thought about exactly what you just said? Just invest, because it'll reap the benefits.
To be honest, with the Conservative Party, I don't think they really care that much about the public services. For example,
They're spending a record amount of money in the public services.
If they were spending a record amount of money in the public services, then why is there a crisis time after time, year after year?
I've never known, in the entirety of my lifetime, I've never known a year where someone didn't claim there was an NHS crisis. I think we've magnified the one at the moment, and there are clearly real issues that it's thrown up. But I don't think they're exclusive to the current administration. They might have found themselves a slightly more high-profile home under the current administration, but I don't believe they are solely the domain of the Conservatives. We did a programme a little while back when we looked at how many hospitals closed, how many midwives went under the previous administration, and that was rather shocking too. Jay, thank you for that. Text here from Patrick, who seems to have a PhD in making a point and addressing something that I didn't even say or raise. He says, "You're just dumb. You would rather live in an unfair society where the rich don't pay their fair share of tax and hide their fortunes while the poor go to food banks, and the gap between the rich parasites at the top and the poor gets even wider. Go ahead, Tory boy." God, he's good, isn't he, Patrick? I wish he was my brother. Is that fantastic? Here's your problem, though, Pat. What you're not addressing is you're talking about the super rich. Who doesn't want to stick some of those swindlers in the clink, if they are swindlers? If they are. They're the people that I want to grab as well. We're not talking about the super rich. We're not talking about people who have offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. We're talking about the richest tier in mainstream society who do pay all of their taxes. They pay more of the taxes than any other group. In fact, if they weren't there, we'd really be stuffed. So one isn't at the expense of the other. You can talk about something without... It doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the problems at the other end. Man alive. Has the vote, I expect. Steve's in Marlborough. Hi, Steve.
Oh, yeah, and I'd like to make 6 points about taxation as a business owner.
OK.
Firstly, you're right. 1% of the population pay 30% of the tax.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, as a caveat to this, I run my own business, as you know. My salary is the lowest this year that it's been for the last 5 years. I've drawn my tax returns are the lowest it's ever been. So it's not all, glitter and things. But as a business, you pay corporation tax, which is well evident. You also collect VAT as a free VAT tax collector. Our particular business, we pay VAT on the profit, so that comes out. Just to make this very clear, because people got a bit confused last time I mentioned this on air, we pay employers taxation for our employees. That's not the money we collect off of the people that work for us and give to the revenue. I pay 13% of every single person's salary in tax as an employer. So every person that works for me costs me 13% in tax. I pay pensions now for all of my staff at 2.5%. I pay business rates on every month of the year that we work. Directors' dividends, so as business owners, we're all earning less money because the tax breaks that were given to us have been removed. So anybody that thinks owning your own business is, that we're all making a fortune, we're at most medium-sized businesses. My business turns over somewhere between £7 and £10 million a year, and I earn less than some of the people that work for me. So there's a very small minority of people that have got huge portfolios all over the world. They're nom-doms living in London who exaggerate the tax system.
But if John McDonnell, though, Steve, could just put corporation tax back to where it was just 8 years ago, if he could do that and then, I don't know, add 5p onto the top rate of tax, he reckons he's done the figures. Why would that not work?
For two reasons. Corporation tax has come down slightly, but because we all now pay more in employers' contributions for all our staff, like I've just mentioned, and we pay pensions on behalf of our staff, the actual tax position for most small to medium-sized companies, we're actually worse off, as I said. That's why I've had my lowest salary for years. And I reiterate, hand on heart, Ian, I earn less than some of the people that work for me. I mean, obviously I own a business, so one day, hopefully, I'll cash that in, God willing. But you cannot increase taxation on businesses year on year because people just won't do it. I will get to a point where I think, hang on a minute, I can go and get a job working for Fred Blogg's motor company as a senior manager, which without blowing my trumpet, I've got the skill set to do, earn more than I'm earning now, and not have the responsibility of employing 17 people.
So your suspicion there is that this always going back to companies or people earning higher amounts is ultimately doesn't work in the long term. Steve, I have to stop there for time. Thank you for that. 03456060973. Ian Finch on Twitter says taxing the rich is not the same as taxing higher earners. I think wealth capital gains taxes are not income tax. That's a fair point. Paul Skipper says fake news again. Not sure what the fake news is. Just like saying that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell went at private school when they went to grammar. Well, Jeremy Corbyn went to Castle House School, which is an independent proprietary school, which was in Shropshire. That's a private school. Yeah, we went on to go to grammar, but he certainly started in the private sector. Never made a comment about John McDonnell. He says, more lies. I lived in Sweden. My daughter is Swedish. They are a socialist country compared to ours. Well, because you tax people more doesn't make you a socialist country. I challenge you to perhaps come up with a little more evidence other than the fact that your daughter lived there and compared to ours, they're socialist. Scandinavia and many countries within Scandinavia have a far more generous set of business laws, for example, probably more liberal business laws than the United States have. For that, they're incredibly business and absolutely nothing socialist about the capitalist corporate system within Scandinavia. They do have a different spending plan, but that doesn't necessarily make them a socialist country because they tax more and spend more, etc., etc. There are other issues, as we've discussed many times when talking about Scandinavia, but it's a view, and I'm happy to air it. 0345 6060 973. Back on the phones with you on this one in a few moments' time. Also to come this evening.
It's disheartening. I mean, you can't believe what you're told. You're actively encouraged to go and buy a diesel vehicle and think about the environment, and now we're the enemy. Yeah.
I'll tell you as well in a bit which part of the country it is where diesel drivers will have to pay £50 a day if they want to park in a certain area. In fact, it's not even a day, it's 4 hours. 50 quid! Where does the war on diesel come from, and have you been a victim of it? What are your thoughts on that? Also, more on the news that Twitter has stripped several right-wing accounts of their verified blue tick status. Edward Hardy is a social media commentator. He'll explain what this means and why it matters next on LBC. Just gone 10:30, and the latest news headlines come from Paul Smith.
Detectives investigating the disappearance of a young woman in Dorset have arrested a 49-year-old man on suspicion of murder. Officers believe the suspect is known to Geyer Pope. The first pictures have emerged of Robert Mugabe since Zimbabwe's military moved in against him. The 93-year-old shown inside his official residence, smiling along with the man who's trying to remove him. A second person has been arrested in connection with the death of a man in a firework arson attack in Birmingham. A 22-year-old man is being held on suspicion of murder. LBC weather: any cloud and patchy rain will clear tonight, leaving it cold with a widespread frost, blustery showers for parts of Scotland, an overnight low of -2.
This is LBC.
A Ford Motorcraft service is a bit like a set menu. You know what you're going to get and you know the price. Plus, you don't need to leave a tip. Get your Ford Motorcraft service for just £149 at any participating Ford dealer. Book at ford.co.uk.
Price is recommended retail price, including parts, labour and VAT. Terms and conditions apply.
Right now, while you heat up last night's pizza, a rock legend is leaving his dressing room. There's a stadium out there buzzing with anticipation. And a world champion ready for the starting bell. So, what are you waiting for? Buy and sell tickets to your favourite events on stubhub.co.uk. StubHub, your tickets out.
Cara, joining video conference. Hi, Cara. Wow, check out your tan.
Thanks. I just got back from Greece.
Oh, nice. So, tell me, do we have 50 of this dress?
App says yes, but I'll double check. Yep, I'll send you some pics.
Fab.
Want to do more in less time? Unified Communications joins up your landlines, mobiles, desktops, laptops and tablets to improve productivity. The future is exciting. Ready? Search Vodafone Business. Terms and conditions apply.
Your journey is always more pleasurable with Aeroflot Russian Airlines. Our young fleet flies to an enormous range of destinations. Come and experience true hospitality delivered by our expert cabin crew and pilots, made even better by the choice of exquisite cuisine served on board. Then just sit back, relax, and enjoy the comfort of our state-of-the-art aircraft. You'll find you've enjoyed yourself before you've even landed. Fly Aeroflot.
Hi, I'm an African elephant, and I'm getting on a bit, but hey, I've been grey and wrinkly my whole life. I think I look rather distinguished. My eyesight changing, now that's the tough part, especially when you keep confusing a hippo for your wife. I've tried glasses, but they slip down my trunk. I just want them to stay put, and for my wife to take me back.
Time to try varifocal contact lenses. Pop into Specsavers for a free trial. Current prescription required, subject to suitability and availability. See in-store for conditions.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
Winterproof your Ford with a Motorcraft service for just £149 at participating Ford dealers. Book at ford.co.uk. Price is recommended retail price.
Late Nights with Ian Collins on LBC.
And thank you to Mike, who tells me that John McDonnell, in fact, spent 2 years at a £12,000 a year prep school. There you go. Just putting that out there. Apparently denied it for 50 years. That's quite a lot of decades of denial. Richard in Chelsea, John McDonnell's grasp of arithmetic becomes more bizarre every day. Next, he'll be promising everybody crackerjack pencils. Well, I'd vote for him in that case. Radio Guy says they'll borrow a load of money for public services, and when the rich move their wealth offshore, the government won't get the money back. The tax the rich idea will not work. Look, I'm in a hair's breadth here of voting for John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn. All right, I'm looking at this plan. Let's just tax people a bit more. Tony makes the point, well, the reason other countries haven't done it is because they all kind of stick to I'm trying to remember what he said. They all kind of stick to the same sort of Western principle. Nobody wants to shift from what has been convention, if you like. He says, French, like Germans, Dutch, Austrians, not had austerity. UK poor have. If French government touches pensions, France would leave the EU. Well, they've had an awful lot of spending cuts. How they sell it and spin it is another matter. But certainly, the poor in this country, depends what you define by the poor. Their status, which isn't always the same people, of course. It's a sort of roundabout merry-go-round thing where people are in that position at one minute, are largely untouched in most of it. It's kind of like the next group. Often working poor is the group that's sometimes felt it. Where do you get the money from? Where do you get the money from? Do you just tax the rich and say that will solve the problem? I think the fear is, economically, as I understand it, it might appear to solve the problem, but firstly, it won't solve it long term, because you just ultimately go back to rich people every time you are short of a few quid. I just go back to the rich. You'd end up in a place where you have no rich left, or you'd have nothing else to tax from them. But there's also a kind of an ethical issue in there as well. Remember, this isn't, this is other people's money. The government doesn't have any money. They only have other people's money that they're spending. 0345 6060 973. Tell me why the John McDonnell plan will absolutely work. I am still suspicious that not a single place on the planet is copying this. Why his predecessor, Ed Miliband, would not be doing this. I don't think it's just because we've got this sort of system, we just stick with the, status quo. I don't think it could be that. If there's a fairer, easier way of the Treasury trousering 17 billion quid to spend, anyone would take it. Which leads me to the question as to why they're not. 0345 6060 973. More of your comments coming in on this. I wanted to take a moment to talk about blue ticks. I don't even know what a blue tick is. Blue ticks are what appear on Twitter, the social media platform. People who have a public profile, whether they're actors or radio presenters or organisations, or people who, talk for a certain cause, often get a verified blue tick. It essentially means they're kind of recognised as individuals or groups that have a specific interest area. That's how I've always seen it. I've never thought of it as an endorsement of their value. If you look at who's got a blue tick, you understand why I say that. But it kind of marks out whether you're reading, your next-door neighbour's Twitter account, or somebody who speaks for a pressure group or a political group, or they're an MP or a broadcaster, that kind of thing. However, so Twitter give these things out. They seem to be giving them out like billio these days. I mean, it doesn't seem to be what it once was. I mean, when I earned my blue tick back in the day, you had to work for it. But there does seem to be, a change in criteria. And there's been another change in criteria because today they removed the blue tick verification from several high-profile right-wing accounts following accusations that it was not doing enough to combat hate speech. So there's a guy called Jason Kessler. He helped organise a far-right march in Charlottesville. the English Defence League's Tommy Robinson, a guy called Richard Spencer, who's an American right-wing commentator and polemicist. Their blue ticks have gone. What does it all mean, and does it matter? It's sort of, I fear this comes under the bracket of be careful what you wish for. Edward Hardy is a social media commentator. Edward, good evening to you.
Good evening.
My suspicion here, and I have no evidence of this, is perhaps that Twitter didn't necessarily look at specific tweets or decide that, that video is sickening and racist, or that comment is outrageous and breaks the law, but more that they perhaps just didn't like some mad right-wingers on their platform. I have no evidence to support that, but that's how it sort of feels.
Well, Twitter have put a note up on their support.twitter.com site where they've detailed basically the reasons that people can be stripped of a blue tick, a verification mark. And it does state on that you don't have to have done something on Twitter. You can have done something off Twitter to get your blue tick removed. So it seems that the individuals that have had their blue tick removed are claiming that the reason is because Twitter's accusing them of inciting or engaging in promotion of hate.
Yeah.
And so Jason Kessler, for example, with his Unite the Right rally, if Twitter deems that to be promoting hate or